We're looking at what additional things we may have interest in within that funding formula. Obviously, there's SSA as a part of that, but there's other things that we've historically, as a House caucus, wanted to consider in those funding packages. So we're still working through that. For example, like transportation equity, per pupil equity, and other things across the state that impacts our different districts as well. Operational sharing is another example. So we're working internally in the caucus to decide where we want to finally land. It's helpful at least knowing that where the Senate is. Obviously, we know where the governor is, and then I would see us starting to, assuming we get that bill from the Senate, start seeing us take some action next week.
On the casino moratorium, any idea how things look in the Senate if the votes are there? What conversations have been like with leadership?
Yeah, from the Senate's perspective, I'm not going to speak for the Senate. I know that Leader Whitfer and others in the Senate are aware that we're doing the bill. I just left him with that or the same statement that I had last week. I don't expect to be DOA when it arrives. I expect it to have full consideration, but I also am not in a position to be able to speak on their behalf.
Said last week, it was taken up for Senate Chambers. We've seen the committee level today on the Senate side. The House bill is a little different than the Senate version. Representative Coffins, he would drop the other provisions outside the 5-year moratorium. So I guess, how it takes here for House Republican caucus was just a 5-year plan.
Yeah, I think that the ideal situation is if we can find, it'd be ideal that we have agreement with the Senate what the bill is. I think you're going to see just being the 5-year piece being the focus of the legislation to kind of align where each side would be if they decide to also move forward. Yeah, and I think, again, ultimately our objective is doing the 5-year. Any other pieces of the bill, I'm not convinced we may not see an amendment from Representative Kaufman today on what the rest of the bill would look like. I think that the 5-year piece is the focus that we've had and we're going to have as it goes through, went through the committee, but obviously we bring it to the floor.
Will you also then consider this legislative discussion at least further steps than, requiring that substitution to?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we should at least be consider that bill. And as we have these conversations, as they work their way through that, I don't know what the full input from the caucus is going to be on a piece of legislation like that, but I think it's at least something we've considered. We've heard from poll watchers and other things that it will provide a level of clarity at the local level. We count a lot of volunteers at the local level to maintain our elections. I think it fits with a lot of the election integrity pieces that we've passed for the last several years. So as it moves forward, I think we'll have further conversation, but I think it is a valid one for us to be having about that on the driver's license.
Speaker Grassley, Democrats are proposing an amendment to the state constitution to allow for citizen-led ballot initiatives. What's your general feeling on that versus how it currently is when the legislature has to start this?
Yeah, I think we have a good system right now. I think you can find yourself in a situation where the election results don't necessarily reflect the amount of policies that are being implemented. I think it really greatly weakens the legislative process when you start going down that path. I think, we've proven for constitutional amendments in the past that we've had a willingness as a legislature to at least consider them. And so I think we have a pretty good process here that things come before the legislature and ultimately have a vote of the people of some of those major pieces. So I think we have a system right now that works and reflects the voices of Iowans.
Sticking with legislative process, on the Senate side for the last few years, they've allowed people to not only watch the subcommittee hearings on Zoom, but participate and provide public comment. On the House side, people can watch, but people can't provide any comment. And I think all of us have seen on the Senate side that sometimes there's some pretty good expert input. Is that something that House leaders would ever reconsider, allowing people to testify at a subcommittee remotely?
I would keep in mind too, in our time in the majority, we've made huge technological advancements and interaction from the public when it comes to the things that we do at the legislative level. For example, when I was elected, we didn't even have cameras in here. So we have made a lot of advancements on the House side of being able to utilize technology so Iowans can participate. I also think it's important that as somebody that's never missed a vote on the House floor, I think it's important for us to be here in the building to be a part of the process. And so I've been kind of a position utilizing technology to keep Iowans informed, but also making sure that we maintain the integrity of the process. So at this point, I don't see there being any changes to that policy.
How do you feel about a start
Oh, I assume it'll be another battle that we've had several of years. You're going to have multiple, you have two sides in that. Obviously, the flexibility for school districts, but there are a lot of industries that it could potentially impact. We hear a lot when it comes, for example, from the tourism industry. It took us several years to get to the point where, making sure that, and let's be obvious, it didn't impact the state fair. And so at this point, I'm not overly excited about a change. I also haven't had a conversation with the caucus to see if that's the direction we want to go. Typically, we've landed in a position that when it affects the tourism industry and the state fair, for example, it raises some eyebrows. So we'll see what that looks like as we move forward. We good? All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for taking the time.